The price of a promise is always paid in full. Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the command deck of the fleet vessel Steadfast, her form a silhouette against the cold, unblinking eye of the tactical holotable. Before her, the Kepler 186F system was rendered in serene sapphire light, a map of impossible choices. A swarm of crimson icons, sharp-edged and menacing, represented the Grol Imperium's blockade fleet. They held the civilian colony of Haven hostage, a world of 7 million souls who had done nothing but exist in a place the Grol decided they wanted. The stakes were absolute, displayed in the corner of the main view screen for all to see. A countdown timer, stark white against a field of black, read, 03 Zayushomrzasho. It was an ultimatum, the only form of diplomacy the Grol practiced. Parallax confirmed their disposition, Rostova said, her voice a low anchor in the quiet hum of the bridge. The fleet mind's synthesized voice emanated from the chrome sphere hovering over the table's center, smooth and devoid of emotion. The Grol fleet maintains standard intimidation formation, Admiral. 27 vessels centered on the subjugator-class dreadnought. Unflinching will. Their ultimatum repeats on all standard channels: Haven will surrender its sovereignty, and all material assets or compliance will be enforced. The term was a sterile cover for systematic destruction. A deep thrum vibrated through the deck plates, the signature of the Steadfast's primary reactor, holding a steady state of readiness. Commander Jianli, his jaw tight, stood at Rostova's side. 3 hours until they start making examples. Their doctrine is flawless in its brutality. They've never failed to follow through. He gestured to a smaller cluster of icons held just outside the blockade line. And they know about the supply convoy. Those ships are carrying medical isotopes and protein synthesizers for Haven. They are helpless. The Grol were not just conquerors. They were architects of despair, and they used civilian lives as leverage with chilling precision. They believe we will break. A small cabin aboard the freighter, Starlight Wanderer, was filled with the low rhythmic beep of a nutrient drip. A physician, her face etched with exhaustion, adjusted the flow for a young girl lying in a makeshift medical cot. The child's fever had spiked hours ago, a reaction to a native pollen. "My mom's on the first light," the girl whispered, her voice frail. "She said she'd be here." The doctor gave her hand a gentle squeeze, the worn fabric of her own jumpsuit, a small comfort. "She will be," she promised, looking toward the viewport, where the distant, cruel stars of the Grol blockade glittered. "Our friends are here now. They won't let them stop her." "The Grol's reputation is their primary weapon," Rostova stated, her gaze fixed on the crimson icons. "They rely on their history of terror to win battles before a shot is fired. They expect us to fold." Lieutenant Anya Sharma, the fleet's lead on electronic warfare, looked up from her console, the green glow reflecting in her eyes. "Admiral, their communications are locked down tight. But I'm picking up something. A faint repeating energy signature from deep within their formation. It's too structured for background noise." Rostova's focus narrowed. A weapon charging. A sensor array. Sharma shook her head, frustrated. "Negative, Admiral. The profile doesn't match any known hardware. It's like a whisper, a data ghost. A mystery was a loose thread, and Rostova knew loose threads could unravel entire empires if pulled correctly. Keep digging, Lieutenant. Parallax project the convoy's viable entry vectors." The AI painted a series of desperate high-risk paths onto the map, all of them choked by Grol patrol routes. "We will not. Direct confrontation is what they want," Lee argued, tracing a line of attack with his finger. "It would validate their ultimatum. We could punch a hole, but we'd pay for every inch in blood and metal." Rostova nodded, her mind already several steps ahead. "Which is why we will not give them the fight they expect. We will not confirm their worldview. We will teach them its cost. The air on the bridge seemed to thin, charged with a new intensity. The low hum of the ship's life support was a steady breath, Anya Rostova said, turning to the EW specialist. I want you to prepare the looking glass protocol. Give me ghost signatures a full carrier group's worth. Send them on a wide looping trajectory toward the Grol's flank. Sharma's eyes lit up with understanding. A decoy fleet. Draw their attention away from the convoy's path. Rostova's plan was taking shape not as a hammer blow, but as a subtle redirection of force. The board is set. It's more than a decoy, Rostova corrected. It's a lesson in perception. While they're watching our ghosts, we will hide our real strength in plain sight. She looked at Lee. Commander, I want echo projectors fitted to every freighter in that convoy. Make them scream on sensors like a battleship. Meanwhile, our destroyers, the Valiant and the Dauntless, will mask their signatures to match the freighters. Lee's expression shifted from grim resolve to sharp comprehension. A shell game. They'll be looking for warships and see freighters while they ignore the freighters that are actually our guns. Parallax interjected its voice, a calm counterpoint to the rising tension. Admiral, the Grol doctrine of overwhelming force dictates they will redeploy heavy assets to meet a perceived flanking maneuver. The probability of them diverting sensor priority from the convoy is 92.8%. The fleet mind paused for a fraction of a second. However, their subjugator core has a paranoia index in the 87th percentile. He will not abandon the lane completely. And now the pieces move. The order was given. In the cold void, the human fleet began its silent dance. On Grol screens, a phantom fleet of cruisers and carriers bloomed into existence, their simulated engine trails carving a slow, menacing arc toward the Imperium's flank. At the same time, the real human destroyers went electronically silent, their profiles shrinking to that of simple cargo haulers. The civilian convoy, now screaming with the projected energy of a naval strike group, began its cautious advance. The console glare on Sharma's face was a focused emerald as she orchestrated the symphony of false signals. Subjugator Core stood on his own bridge, a monument of scarred flesh and polished armor. He watched the approaching human fleet with contempt. Arrogant primitives, he growled. They believe such a transparent feint will distract us. He pointed a clawed finger at the tactical display. Shift the 3rd and 4th lances to intercept their flanking force, but keep the 1st lance focused here. His finger tapped on the icons representing the inbound convoy. Something is not right. The heat from his command throne shimmered in the air. Fire a resonance pulse, Core commanded. Let's see what is truly hiding in the static. A specialized Grol cruiser at the heart of their formation unleashed a wave of energy, a specific frequency designed to bypass standard stealth and get a hard physical return from a ship's hull. It was a tool for exposing lies. On the steadfast alarms blared a warning. Pulse inbound, Sharma called out. It will burn through the echo projectors. They'll see the freighters for what they are. Their certainty is a weapon we can use. Anya, what was that whisper you detected earlier? Rostova asked, her voice cutting through the rising alarm. Sharma's fingers flew across her console. Still there, Admiral. A low-frequency data stream. It's a network. Parallax cross-reference with the resonance pulse frequency. The AI's chrome sphere pulsed with light. Analysis complete. The Grol are not just seeing targets, they are pre-assigning them. The Whisper is their internal fire control network, locking every gun in their fleet to a specific target before the engagement begins. The Pulse is for final confirmation. This was the reveal the loose thread pulled taut. The Grol's rigid efficiency was their flaw. They were so certain of their tactical doctrine that their systems were designed to confirm it, not question it. They're not just watching Rostova breathe. They're building a ledger of targets, and they expect us to let them. Her eyes narrowed. Commander Lee, signal the convoy. Tell them to execute cascade venting on my mark. Lee's head snapped up. Admiral, that will light them up on every thermal sensor in the system. It's a massive risk. It's a calculated one. Rostova replied, her gaze unwavering. They are expecting solid hulls, not incandescent clouds. Anya prepared to piggyback a data spike on their pulse's return wave. The plan was audacious, a pivot from pure deception to sensory overload. The Grol were looking for needles in a haystack. Rostova was about to set the entire haystack on fire. Brace for the reckoning, Mark Rostova commanded. In the darkness, the 12 freighters of the convoy simultaneously vented superheated plasma from their primary coolant systems. 12 brilliant blossoms of light erupted in the void, blindingly hot and electromagnetically chaotic. The Grol's resonance pulse, a sophisticated tool of precision, slammed into a wall of raw, unpredictable energy. On the unflinching will, Kor's tactical display dissolved into a mess of shrieking, nonsensical returns. The neat ledger of targets was now a storm of confused data. His officers recoiled in shock. Subjugator, we've lost targeting locks. The heat bloom is overwhelming our sensors. For a critical, priceless 2 seconds, the Grol fleet was blind and confused. Their rigid system, designed for unflinching execution, had no protocol for a target that simply ceased to be a target and became a star instead. It was in this window of manufactured chaos that the true human assets made their move. The destroyers, valiant and dauntless, their freighter masks discarded, surged forward. They weren't firing weapons. Instead, they deployed the mirror lattice. Thousands of small, hyper-reflective plates unfolded from their hulls, snapping into a precise geometric formation between the Grol and the still glowing plasma clouds. The Grol, their systems finally recalibrating, did what their doctrine demanded they fired. Beams of incandescent energy meant to obliterate the convoy lashed out from their forward cannons. Return to sender. The beams struck the mirror lattice. Instead of continuing onward, they were caught bent and sent screaming back into the Grol formation. A storm of the Imperium's own energy tore through their forward line. Shields flared and died. Hulls were scorched black by their own weapons. It wasn't a destructive blow, the reflected energy was too diffuse to be lethal, but it was something far more effective, a perfect, undeniable rebuttal. It was a lesson delivered with mathematical precision. On the Steadfast's bridge, no one cheered. They watched as the Grol formation broke in disarray, their forward ships scrambling to cool overloaded systems and re-establish sensor locks. One of the convoy freighters, the First Light, had been caught by a stray, panicked shot from a Grol gunner before the lattice was fully active. Its shields flared violently, a flash of sapphire against the black. Inside, alarms shrieked as crew members were thrown against bulkheads. The damage was contained, but the cost was felt, a tremor of fear, a reminder of the razor's edge they walked. The convoy, its path now clear, pushed forward toward the welcoming blue sphere of haven. The first debt is paid. The Grol fleet, battered by its own hubris, slowly reformed its lines. They were wounded, but more in pride than in structure. Subjugator Kor's rage was a palpable force even across millions of kilometers of empty space. He had been made a fool of. The human fleet had not broken his blockade with force but with intellect. They had turned his own weapon back on him. The countdown timer for Haven's subjugation had paused during the engagement, but now it resumed, a stubborn testament to the Grol's single-minded doctrine. Parallax analyzed the aftermath, its voice cutting through the quiet satisfaction on the bridge. The Grol have shifted to a defensive posture, Admiral. Their energy signatures indicate they are reinforcing shield power and tightening their formation. A similar deception will not be effective a second time. Lee nodded in agreement, his earlier tension replaced by a grudging respect for the enemy's discipline. They learn fast. Now they'll be expecting tricks. Our next move has to be decisive. The scent of ozone from the overworked EW consoles was sharp in the recycled air. The conflict triangle on the bridge became clear. "Parallax, what's your recommendation?" Rostova asked. The chrome sphere shimmered. The highest probability for mission success lies in a decapitation strike. Their command ship, the Unflinching Will, has diverted 11% of its shield power to recharge its main weapon capacitor. A coordinated alpha strike from our fleet has a 78.4% chance of breaching its hull and forcing a Grol retreat. It was a cold, logical solution, an execution. "We are not them," Rostova shook her head without hesitation. "No, we do not strike first. We do not assassinate commanders. We are here to break the ultimatum, not to become murderers." Lee took a step forward, his voice tight with controlled frustration. "Admiral, with respect, they won't learn a lesson they don't survive to study. They see your restraint as weakness. The human moral line was drawing a boundary that the AI's calculus could not see and that Lee's pragmatism wanted to cross. They will learn." Rostova countered, her voice low but unyielding. "And they will survive to study it. Remember our directive, Commander. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. The lore of her fleet was its soul, a promise made to themselves and to the galaxy. They were guardians, not conquerors." Her gaze shifted to the main screen where a new communication was being flagged. It was from the Grol. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a public broadcast sent on all channels for Haven and the entire sector to witness. It was a list, a tally. One by one, the Grol displayed images of the human ships, the Steadfast, the Valiant, the Dauntless, and next to each they placed an image of a district on Haven, a hospital, a school, a residential arcology. It was a new ultimatum more cruel than the last. Each human ship was now tied to a civilian target. If a human vessel acted aggressively, its corresponding compliance cost on the planet below would be paid in fire. A family in Haven's arcology. 7 watched the broadcast on their wall screen. Their district with its parks and homes was shown next to the flagship of the human fleet, the Steadfast. The father put his arm around his son, pulling him close. The child looked from the terrifying image of the Grol dreadnought to the sleek, hopeful lines of the human vessel. He didn't understand the strategy or the stakes, only that his life was now part of a terrible equation written by monsters. He felt the deep, resonant vibration of the planetary shields humming through the floor, a sound that was once reassuring, but now felt terrifyingly fragile. "Their strength is their cage." Subjugator Core appeared on the screen, his voice a gravelly pronouncement of doom. "The choice is simple. The human fleet will withdraw from this system within 12 hours. For every hour they remain beyond that deadline, one of these designated targets will be purged. The ledger is public. The consequences are clear." The countdown timer on the Steadfast's bridge was reset. It now read, Chapter 12. The Grol had escalated, turning their doctrine into an instrument of public psychological torture. Lee slammed his fist onto the edge of a console. "They've chained us. Every move we make now directly threatens civilian lives." But Rostova was watching the broadcast with a look of intense, chilling focus. She saw not a chain, but a key. "They've made a mistake, Commander. A fatal one." She turned to her team, the fire of an idea in her eyes. "Their doctrine demands they be public. They need witnesses to their resolve. They've just given us the entire sector as our audience." She pointed to the Grol's public tally. "They believe this ledger binds us. We will use it to bind them." A slow smile touched her lips, cold and sharp as a shard of ice. Parallax, tell me about Grol energy distribution. From the data we gathered during the mirror lattice engagement, what did we learn? The AI's sphere glowed. A critical vulnerability was observed, Admiral. Their network is hyper-efficient shunting power between systems with unmatched speed. However, it creates a fractional second latency. When a capital-class weapon is charged to 100%, its corresponding shield grid weakens by a measurable 4.7% for 1.2 seconds before the shot is fired. Their doctrine is their unraveling. That was it. The second loose thread. The Grol couldn't fire at full power and defend at full power at the exact same instant. It was a tiny flaw, a crack in the monolith of their power. They've publicly tied their fire to our actions, Rostova explained, the plan blooming in her mind. We will give them an action they cannot ignore. We will force them to charge their weapons, all of them. And in that moment of absolute commitment, we will show the galaxy what their ultimatum truly costs. Commander Lee's eyes widened as he grasped at the terrifying audacity of her plan. Admiral, you're going to offer them a target. Anya Sharma looked up, her expression a mix of horror and awe. You're baiting a trap. Rostova's gaze was fixed on the tactical map. No, Lieutenant. I am setting a stage. The Grol are the actors. Their doctrine is the script. The whole sector will be the audience. The bridge was silent, the only sound the faint hiss of the coolant systems. Lee, I want the Valiant stripped of all non-essential personnel, Rostova commanded, her voice ringing with newfound authority. Load its cargo bay with every drone we can spare, especially the Mira drones. It's going to make a run, a direct foolish charge straight at the unflinching will. Lee protested immediately. You're sacrificing the Valiant and its crew. There's no way it survives a direct assault, Rostova met his gaze. The point isn't for us to survive the attack, Commander. The point is for it to survive the shot. The reckoning is at hand. The pieces were set for the second time, but this board was larger, the stakes impossibly higher. The destroyer Valiant, a skeleton crew at its helm, broke from the human formation. It accelerated hard, a single blue icon streaking toward the heart of the Crimson Crescent. On the public channel, Subjugator Core's voice boomed across the system. The human destroyer Valiant has chosen defiance, so be it. Its designated compliance cost is now forfeit. All ships target the Valiant. We will make an example of this pathetic gesture. He had taken the bait. It was more than an attack. It was a public execution, a demonstration of the Grol's unflinching resolve. On the tactical display, energy signatures across the Grol fleet began to spike as their main weapons charged. It was exactly what Rostova had counted on, the fatal, arrogant commitment of their entire force to a single glorious act of destruction. The vibration in the Steadfast's deck felt deeper now, a resonant hum of power waiting to be unleashed. Parallax, is the ledger ready? Rostova asked, her voice a calm island in the sea of rising tension. The AI's voice was steady. The ledger is open, Admiral. All sector-wide public relays are synced and standing by. They will see the accounting. The Grol weapons were reaching peak charge. On Sharma's sensor screen, a cascade of flickering amber lights appeared over the Grol fleet, each one indicating a shield grid momentarily weakening by that critical 4.7%. They were exposed. Commander Lee, signal. The Valiant. Rostova ordered, her eyes locked on the impending collision of forces. Execute. Far across the void, the Valiant did not fire a single shot. Instead, its cargo bay doors snapped open, releasing a cloud of thousands of mirror drones. They swarmed into position, forming a complex parabolic shield in the path of the incoming Grol fire. At that exact same instant, the Steadfast and the rest of the human fleet, positioned light minutes away at the system's edge, fired their main cannons. Not at the Grol, but at a carefully calculated point in empty space far behind the enemy fleet. The beams of pure energy, silent and impossibly fast, began their journey across the system. The beams from the Grol fleet, a torrent of directed fury, converged on the single defiant point of the Valiant. For a fraction of a second, the drone swarm flared into an incandescent shield, a lattice of pure reflection that bucked and groaned under the impossible load. The energy of an entire armada was focused on it. The mirror shield vaporized, but it had done its job. It had held for the critical 1.2 seconds of the Grol's collective shield weakness. In that same instant, the human fleet's energy beams fired from across the system arrived at their designated coordinates in empty space. They struck nothing. They were an attack that missed. But they were not meant to hit a target. They were a trigger. On the bridge of the Steadfast, Anya Sharma's console flashed a single word. Synchronized. The data spike is active. Admiral, she confirmed, her voice strained. Their network is compromised. The trap seeded minutes earlier in the ghost data of a sensor pulse was now sprung. The Grol's hyper-efficient battle network, the very core of their doctrine, was about to become their damnation. A lesson is about to be taught. The Grol network, designed for perfect efficiency, detected the massive, coherent energy of the human beams passing behind them. Its corrupted logic did not register them as a miss. Instead, it interpreted them as a catastrophic power surge from a friendly source, an energy feed to be immediately distributed across the entire fleet to prevent a system-wide overload. It was a fail-safe, a protocol for mutual support. But the data spike had rewritten one critical variable, the definition of overload. The network now saw its own ship's fully charged weapons as the source of the crisis. In a cascade of flawless, self-destructive logic, the Grol battle network acted to save itself. It shunted the excess power from each ship's weapon capacitors directly to its nearest neighbor. But it didn't just send raw energy. It sent the fully formed firing solution. Every Grol ship, in the instant before it fired on the Valiant, had its target reassigned by its own network to the Grol ship next to it. They became a circuit of self-annihilation. The ledger is now open. A storm of energy erupted within the Grol formation. It was not the chaotic blast of an ambush, but the precise, calculated pattern of a firing drill. Lances of crimson energy, meant for a single human destroyer, instead speared through the weakened shields of their sister ships. Weapon emplacements slagged. Engine nacelles ruptured in silent, brilliant flashes of blue plasma. The perfectly ordered crescent of the Grol fleet tore itself apart from the inside out, each ship executing a flawless attack on its comrade. The console glare on the Steadfast bridge reflected the silent internecine carnage. On the public channel for the entire sector to see the ledger appeared. It was a simple, brutal accounting. On one side, the designation of a Grol ship. In the middle, an arrow. On the other side, the designation of another Grol ship. Below, a running tally of the damage calculated in real time. The Grol Imperium's public ultimatum had been replaced by a public record of its own self-inflicted defeat. It wasn't a battle, it was an audit. Subjugator Kor watched his fleet cannibalize itself, his mind unable to process the scene. His flawless doctrine, his instrument of absolute power, had turned on him. "Report," he bellowed, his voice cracking. "What is happening?" His tactical officer stared at his console, his mandibles trembling. "Subjugator. Our own network. We are doing this to ourselves." The heat on his command throne felt like a funeral pyre. They are paying their own price. The Valiant, caught in the crossfire of misdirected energy, was thrown violently. Its skeleton crew, strapped into their crash couches, felt the hull scream as stray beams raked across its armor. The ship's lights flickered and died, plunging the bridge into emergency red. The chief helmsman, a young ensign named Corvan, felt a searing pain in his arm as a plasma conduit ruptured the heat flash burning through his suit. This was the cost, tangible and sharp. They were wounded, but they were alive. On the Steadfast, the damage reports from the Valiant scrolled across Lee's screen. Heavy structural damage, multiple system failures, wounded crew, he announced, his voice grim. But their core life support is holding. They did it, Admiral. Rostova's expression was not one of triumph, but of profound solemnity. A victory built on the willingness of her crew to face annihilation was a heavy one. Get a rescue team ready, Commander. Bring our people home. The Grol fleet was a ruin. Not a single ship had been destroyed by human hands, but over half the fleet was disabled, adrift, and powerless. The rest were heavily damaged, their offensive capabilities shattered. The unflinching will itself had taken a direct hit to its forward weapon array from its own escort cruiser. The ultimatum was broken. The countdown timer was gone, replaced on the Grol's public channel by the damning, ever-scrolling ledger. Hold the line. From Haven, a message arrived, the voice of the colony's governor choked with emotion. Steadfast. We don't know how. We saw what you did. You saved us. You saved everyone. Millions of people were breathing freely for the first time in days. The shadow of the Grol's ultimatum lifted. On the streets of Arcology 7, the family that had watched their home become a target now watched the crimson icons of the Grol fleet flicker and die on the public newsfeed. The father held his son not in fear, but in a new, quiet awe. The remaining Grol vessels are attempting to withdraw. Parallax reported its tone as neutral as ever. However, the subjugator's vessel is holding its position. It is venting drive plasma, but its primary weapon capacitor is recharging. Slowly. Lee straightened his focus, snapping back to the tactical display. A final act of spite. He can't win. He must know that. The human fleet was untouched, its strength absolute. Rostova knew. This was the last desperate spasm of a broken doctrine. Kor could not accept a world where his ultimatum had failed. If he could not conquer, he would simply destroy. He's going to fire on Haven, she said, her voice a blade of ice. He's abandoned all pretext of strategy. This is just rage. The ultimate test of her own ethos was at hand. She had refused the AI's call for a clean decapitation strike. Now that decision had left a wounded beast with one last fang. The account is not yet settled. Parallax! Calculate the charge time on his main weapon, Rostova ordered. 2 minutes. 14 seconds. Admiral, the AI replied instantly. At its current rate, it will not reach full power, but the resulting discharge will be sufficient to overwhelm Haven's planetary shields and cause catastrophic environmental damage. The conflict triangle was at its sharpest point. Rostova's moral line against indiscriminate killing, Parallax's cold logic, which would now surely demand the dreadnought's destruction, and Kor's final suicidal expression of his doctrine. I will not destroy that ship, Commander Rostova said, anticipating Lee's argument before he could make it. I will not validate his worldview by becoming the monster he believes me to be. Lee's hands clenched into fists. Then what do we do? Let him fire? Let millions die to prove a philosophical point? The tension on the bridge was a physical force, the low hum of the ship's systems drowned out by the frantic beat of human hearts in their chests. We disarm him, Rostova stated. We take his weapon away. Publicly. Anya, can you get me a microchannel into their primary energy grid? We know its weaknesses now. We have the key. Sharma's face was pale, but her fingers were steady on her console. Admiral, their network is in chaos. I can't guarantee a stable link, but... Yes, I can open a door. The faint scent of ozone returned as she pushed her systems to their absolute limit. "We will show them a better way," Parallax Rostova commanded, turning to the chrome sphere. "Prepare a data package. Not a weapon, not a virus. A message. I want to stream our own power management schematics directly into his energy grid. Show him how we balance our shields and weapons. Show him stability. Show him control." Lee stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You're trying to teach him now. A lesson isn't a lesson if the student is dead," Commander Rostova said softly. "His system is designed to shunt and distribute power to prevent overload. We are going to give him an option it has never seen before, a path to de-escalation. A safe way to vent the charge. It was an insane gamble, an act of profound, audacious mercy. It was an offer of knowledge in the face of annihilation. The choice is theirs to make. The channel is open." Admiral Sharma whispered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Uploading the data package now." The information flowed across the void, a silent offering of peace into the heart of a war machine. On the bridge of the unflinching will, alarms shrieked as the foreign data entered their crippled network. Corps' engineers frantically tried to purge it, but it was too late. Their own system, designed for efficiency above all else, saw the elegant, stable human power schematic as a solution. The Grol network was presented with a choice. On one path, continue funneling dwindling power to the main cannon, a process that was causing cascading system failures. On the other, adopt the foreign but vastly more stable schematic, which would safely vent the weapon's charge through the ship's heat sinks. For a machine built on logic, there was no contest. For Subjugator Corps, it was the ultimate humiliation. He watched helpless as his own ship chose the path of his enemy. He watched as the charge indicator on his main weapon flickered and began to drop. The catastrophic energy building in his ship's core was safely, efficiently, and publicly bled away into massive plumes of steam that vented into the void. The roar of the charging cannon was replaced by the gentle hiss of cooling systems. The weapon was inert. The threat was over. His final act of defiance had been undone not by a torpedo, but by a blueprint. Their doctrine is broken. In a harbor on Haven, a young dockworker paused, watching the distant star of the Grol dreadnought. He'd seen the energy building on the public feeds, a prelude to a final, spiteful death blow. He had braced for the planetary alarms, for the shaking of the ground. Instead, he saw the ship release a vast, gentle cloud of vapor like a sigh. He didn't understand the tactics, but he understood the image. It was the posture of surrender. Around him, the city began to breathe again. Rostova opened a channel, this time directly to Corps' bridge. His face appeared on the main screen, a mask of shattered pride and disbelief. "Subjugator Corps," she began, her voice calm and measured, carrying no hint of triumph. "Your ultimatum has been answered. The public ledger of your fleet's actions is now permanent record. Your campaign in this system is over." Corps stared back, his voice a low growl of pure venom. You did not fight. You cheated." Rostova's gaze was unyielding. "We did not come here to fight. We came here to teach. You built a system on the principle that a threat is as good as a blow. We have shown you and the rest of the galaxy that a flawed principle will always collapse under its own weight." The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. "A new precedent is written. You have a choice," Rostova continued. "You can surrender your vessel and your command to the authority of this fleet to be held accountable by the Sector Council. Or you can remain here adrift and explain to your own Imperium how your doctrine devoured your fleet." She did not need to mention the public ledger that was now being copied and analyzed in every data hub from here to the Galactic core. The Grol's reputation, their primary weapon, was shattered. Corps' image wavered, and then the channel cut out. On the tactical display, the unflinching Will's remaining systems began to shut down. One by one, the lights on the great warship went dark, leaving it a dead hulk in the starlight. The other Grol ships that were still functional, their chain of command broken, turned and fled the system, their retreat a final silent admission of defeat. Parallax's synthesized voice filled the quiet of the bridge. Admiral, the Grol Imperium has just posted a priority message to the Sector Council. They are officially rescinding the doctrine of ultimatum compliance. It is being entered into the Galactic record as a failed and prohibited strategic principle. The institutional consequence had been swift. Public humiliation was a more potent political force than 1,000 wrecked warships. The public ledger, which had been tracking the battle in real time, flashed a final update. The tally was complete, showing a clear, undeniable chain of causality leading from the Grol's initial threat to their own fleet's incapacitation. The lights of the crippled Grol ships now awaiting human rescue and repair crews dimmed to a cold pewter gray. Rostova turned away from the screen, her gaze sweeping over her bridge and her crew. They had faced an unbreakable doctrine and had refused to break themselves against it. They had held to a harder path and proven it true. They had not won by destroying their enemy, but by forcing them to confront the flawed reflection in the mirror. They taught with numbers and remembered with ledgers. This was the cost of a promise paid in full, not with blood, but with truth. A balance has been struck.